Hello everyone, as always, I'm Vlad Sparastoria. I shoot and I know things about shooting, and this beautiful pistol is a Canik TTI Combat. What is Canik? What is TTI Combat? If you still don't know what I'm talking about, even if you've been living under the shooting range's bullet trap, I have. First of all, Canik is pronounced incorrectly. It should be something like Janik, also because it's a Turkish name, but we've gotten so used to calling it Canik, me and other people, that now the mispronunciation just sticks. It's a brand I'm particularly fond of. If you don't know, right now in my life, I'm a shooting instructor here at the National Shooting Range in Legniano. But in the past, I worked at another shooting range in Poland. Maybe some of you remember from my old videos in particular, and that shooting range was also a gun shop, actually a pretty big distributor of firearms and ammunition. And they distributed Canik in Poland, so they had the exclusive distribution of that brand, which also made them the customer service. And if you called customer service, for example, you were literally calling them. I was the one who fixed, for example, the guns for customers, the orders we had that we had received, so many things. So I worked a lot from this point of view, and it's one of the pistols that I wouldn't say I know, but maybe I knew best. Also because when I don't know, I fixed them, checked them, talked about them with customers and other things, I had them right in my hands. They were models even a bit older than this one, which mechanically more or less all work in the same way. But I can't say that I know it that well today. Nevertheless, I'm still very fond of it. Basically, these Caniks are based on a design derived from the Walther P99. In fact, the very first pistols were literally copies of the Walther P99. By the way, this Canik weapon sold very well in Poland. And why is that? I don't know if you know, but the Walther P99 is also produced in Poland and is standard issue for the police. So it was a Turkish design, but it adapted particularly well to that market. That's something I discovered later while working on it, working inside it. Exactly. It's a Browning system, or rather a Browning SIG, so it locks in the ejection port and has a striker-fired mechanism. The striker-fired mechanism isn't like the typical one in Glocks, where it's a so-called pre-cocked system where the striker has to travel back a little bit. But it's a true single action which actually lends itself very well to creating really exceptional trigger pulls. And this is where TTI, Taran Tactical Innovations, comes into play. This company is very interesting because it provides in various ways, both with extreme customizations and also with its own production, but also through training services for excellence in the firearms field. Just think, it was actually Taran Tactical TTI that trained Keanu Reeves for the role of John Wick. They're the ones who actually provided many of the weapons you see in the John Wick movies. So they're also a bit of a Hollywood icon for this, for having these high-performance weapons on the big screen. They have their own productions, but they also do customization work and collaborate with already existing companies. So what they did was essentially take the basic design of the Canik and push it to the maximum possible, as far as competition performance and compatibility with many modern accessories are concerned. And so we have a very nice match trigger that we're going to try now. We have classic improvements, such as a magwell for quick magazine insertion. We have the sights here with fiber optics, but also, for example, the plates already for mounting two optical devices like red dots. By the way, one of the plates gives you a co-witness, so you can keep the original sights. And I'll add, besides removing the magazine, it already has an integrated compensator here in its operation, which should help a bit with recoil management. I say should, because I've already shot it and I'm not 100% convinced about this, or rather not about this specific gun. I'm just not really convinced about compensators on pistols, but that's another story. Actually, speaking of details, let's do something instead of moving around in front of the camera like this. Let me move it. Let's take a closer look. Let's see how it comes apart, how it works. There won't be any big surprises from this point of view. And then let's try it out. Let's test it here at the shooting range and comment on its performance. In terms of design, the Canik TTI Combat doesn't have any big surprises. In the end, it's just, in quotes, a semi-automatic pistol with the Browning tilting barrel system. Let's see, as always, first the markings on the firearm. Now, quite clearly, the model is written. There's also the TTI logo, along with the 9x19 caliber. while on the other side we simply have the serial number and the information that it was made in Turkey. The controls of the firearm are also pretty standard. We have a magazine release button that can also be switched to the other side. We have an ambidextrous slide stop lever. Here is the ambidextrous slide stop lever, this little lever that will be used later for disassembly. Besides the trigger, there are no other controls. On the back of the firearm, we also have a striker cocking indicator. In this position, the striker is cocked. Obviously, we've checked that the firearm is unloaded. If we release it, here you can see that the striker disappears inside the firearm, indicating that the firing system is not cocked at this moment. Some people like it, for others it's completely irrelevant. It doesn't bother me. I feel indifferent about it. This is a typical feature of the Canik or the Walther P99 from which they are derived. Frankly, seeing whether the trigger system is cocked doesn't make much difference. You can feel it on the trigger. You should know whether your trigger system is cocked or not. Other very interesting ergonomic features are, for example, this thumb rest for the left thumb. When I complete my grip, we also have a rail for accessories. If you want to mount, for example, well, a flashlight on a weapon like this, maybe not so much, but here it's very useful. A counterweight. Many people put on this type of weapon to help with recoil control. In fact, a rather noticeable counterweight, which is also separate from the rest of the slide. On the barrel, we have this compensator, which, as you can see, simply has two ports here that vent the gases, thus pushing the muzzle of the barrel downward, theoretically helping reduce muzzle rise. You can get your hand very high in the grip back here. These pistols have this beaver tail at the back of the grip, quite long and pronounced. It's been a pretty significant trend in recent years on many weapons. It's not that they do it because it looks good. They do it to keep the barrel axis a little lower. But the slide has to go somewhere. And this way we protect the hand a little bit, just a little, and we do something else. Also because there isn't much else, at least externally, to say, except maybe to comment. This smoke-colored finish, we can take it apart. We can pull down the levers for disassembly. And here the frame separates from the barrel, slide, and recoil spring. The polymer frame is extremely, extremely light. You have no idea how much. I laugh about it because, again, it brings back memories, so many things I've done constantly, so I laugh. For example, this damn spring here, which holds, for example, the magazine release. I had to struggle with it once. Canik, so many memories you bring back to me. We were young, younger, slimmer. Even though we're working on this now, those were different times. We can then go ahead and remove the recoil spring. The problem right now is that we'll somehow have to remove the barrel. Unfortunately, to separate the barrel from the rest of the slide requires removing the compensator, which can be removed using a highly specialized tool. You see, with this little lever, sorry, it's hard to do it with the camera holding it in place. I have to push this notch that holds it and then turn. Here we go, sorry, but again, it's a bit hard to do in front of the camera. Turning it there 180 degrees, the compensator is removed. This way I can finally take the barrel out of the slide. As you can see, the barrel has this interrupted thread that screws onto the compensator and this small lever that holds it in place. And as you can see, the barrel has this small cut. It's notched specifically to allow the gases to vent upwards. We'll see during the firing test how effective it actually is. I repeat, I almost want to try this out. I'm curious. I should really think carefully about how to do this kind of experiment. Because, you know, feelings can often be deceiving. We should find an elegant way to measure it. Have two identical guns, one compensated and the other not. Maybe with a barrel like this, but without the cut, and actually see what changes. This is regarding the disassembly of the weapon. As you can see here, we have our firing pin and our firing pin safety. Let's put everything back together at this point so we can go test it. Let's put the barrel in position and we can put our compensator back on. Let's push it all the way in, then rotate it into position until it clicks. Here it is, back in place. Now we can put in the recoil spring. Sorry, I was thinking in plural, but it's just one. That's because it's generally one of the weak points. With Canik pistols, sometimes it's the recoil springs. It happens to many Canik owners that the recoil spring they install, because very often they give you more than one, it's the one that's a bit too light. And there was another shooter here last year who had a problem with exactly this. And I said, look, just put in the heavier one and that's it. Problem solved. That's how it is. We can insert it directly like this. You don't need to push it all the way in. Just put the slide on its guide and pull it back. And now the weapon is ready to use again. Let's go try it. And here we are finally shooting a few rounds with this Canik TTI Combat. Canik, I've spent so much time with you. It's beautiful. Even my laugh is beautiful. Besides, it makes me feel really nostalgic for Poland more than for Turkey. So let me fire a few more rounds and I'll tell you right away what I think about it. What can I say? When I told you earlier that this Canik or Gianik, I'm too used to calling it Canik, but I know that's the wrong way to pronounce the name, but oh well, that's how it stuck. When I told you earlier that this Canik TTI Combat is truly the ultimate evolution of this design, it's true. It was already a very interesting design, and I've already told you about my past relationship with this company. Poor Turks, they so often get discriminated against, and with some brands rightly so, for their firearms manufacturing. But I have to say Canik isn't one of them. They're not perfect, or rather sometimes, especially at the beginning of production, they have their problems. And there are some recurring issues, like the problem you often find with the recoil springs. But aside from that, for the prices they have, they're really fantastic pistols. This one is very comfortable ergonomically. It fits well in the hand, but I would have chosen a different shape for the back strap. Clearly, this one isn't mine at the moment, but these are really just nitpicks. When you grip it, it feels really good in the hand. The grip is wide, but also very ergonomic, especially in this part here, where we can rest the thumb very well, especially when holding it with one hand. The trigger is really nice. Phenomenal. Some of the triggers were already good, like the match triggers they offered in the past with pistols like the SFX. I remember back then when I worked for the Polish distributor at the shooting range in Poland, there weren't so many models, at least at that time. The sights are tall and highly visible. The compensator maybe helps a little, but honestly, I don't feel that much of a difference. I'm not a huge fan. At least not on pistols, but don't get me wrong, on big, powerful calibers, compensators, muzzle brakes, and devices like that can really make a difference in handling the gun. How useful it actually is on a handgun like TH is up for debate, but as far as shootability goes, how it feels in the hand, how it shoots, if it helps, maybe it does, it feels really good in the hand, that's for sure. Let's try to take a few more shots a bit faster. I'll be a statue. I don't know if the compensator makes a difference, if it really makes a difference or not. The trigger is really good. This is yet another demonstration that there are a lot of shooters in Italy who discriminate a lot. The striker-fired system, I'm convinced that if I gave guns where the trigger system is hidden to many people, they wouldn't be able to tell me if it's striker-fired or hammer-fired. By feel, it just feels like it. There's really little difference, and hammers have the reputation of being able to be made much smoother. The issue is a bit technically difficult in some ways. That's true, but that doesn't mean a striker-fired trigger is automatically bad. This is a very nice trigger with a very light take-up, a very gentle break, and then a reset. A short and crisp reset, taking the same length as the trigger pull. Even the earlier triggers, which weren't as advanced, were excellent, but this one is truly fantastic. The Canik TTI Combat. I think it's a very interesting product, and it's definitely for those who aren't that interested. Well, it's legitimate to be that way about Italian production nationalism. Also, I repeat, I've met so many shooters who turn up their noses only when Turkey is mentioned. For many different reasons, rational or not. Nevertheless, the product is definitely very good. So if you're not that interested, in fact, in where it's made and who makes it, it's a good product. If, in fact, instead of having Canik written up here, it said Mario Rossi, a hypothetical new Italian arms factory, people would rush to buy it. Absolutely, there would be a line of people eager to purchase this product. I want to thank the owner of this wonderful pistol for bringing it to the National Shooting Range in Legnano and letting me try it. If you have interesting firearms, write to me, because it's thanks to people like you who come here. Or, for example, where I've been going lately, which is the Sur Range in the province of Pavia. It's thanks to people like you, in fact, that these things are possible, because cycling through all these firearms I show you on the channel would really be impossible. Financially, you don't earn much being a shooting instructor, just so you know. Dottore di tiro, sappiate. If you enjoyed this video, consider leaving a like, a comment, and subscribing. That's all from me for today, and as always, I'll see you next time.